Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Compass Box Studio channel. Today we're actually going to be looking at some budget-conscious drum mics for a lot of you guys. At the studio we're super fortunate to be able to record with some really good gear, really amazing preamps and stuff. For our drum mics, for the longest time we used the really inexpensive Samson DK8 mic kit. So if you look at any of our early recordings, whether it be the live sessions or anything we produce from the studio, we actually use those mics, and they served us really well. And for I think around 40,000 rupees, it's a really good mic kit, solid kick mic, really good hi-hat mic, good overheads. The only place where I felt that maybe the quality was not what I was looking for was the snare and the tom mics, and that typically ends up being the case with most of these budget conscious drum mics. So our primary drum mic kit is the Audix DP7. It's a really good drum mic kit. The D6 is such a fabulous kick mic. It's got the i5, which is the Audix version of an EQ'd 57 for snare, essentially. But it's great on guitar cabs and stuff as well. ADX 51s on the overheads, and the D2s on the toms, and the D4 on the floor tom. What I really like about that kit is that you actually have different voicings for the toms and the floor tom. So the D4 is voiced for the floor tom, and the D2s are voiced for the rack toms. AKG actually has some really high-end microphones, which go well over the lakh price point. But these are like the slightly more affordable series. The AKG Perception drum mic kit. It's a pretty good starting point, kind of like the Samson. So we're gonna check it out and see what it sounds like. The kit itself comes with 7 microphones. So you've got the kick mic, which in this case is the AKG P2, which is their Perception line of microphones. Pretty good, actually. I mean, we'll give you a sample so you can hear it yourself. For the overheads, you've got the Perception 17, the P17. What's really cool about them, unlike most other sort of entry-level overhead mics I've seen, is that it comes with a 20 dB pad. So if you've got a really loud drummer, or if you just need that extra headroom, for the mix stage, that's a really nice, handy thing to have. And then you've got 4 of the P4s. And then you've got 4 of the Perception P4s. So they use the exact same mic for the snare, the toms, as well as the floor tom. In addition to that, you've got 2, windscreens for the 2 overheads, and the mounting brackets required for the snare, tom, and floor tom mics. Before we start on the raw and the slightly mixed version of the drum tracks, I just want to tell you a little bit about what I think about these microphones and tell you about its strengths and weaknesses as well, so you can take a call of whether or not this is a good budget microphone for your studio. At the offset, the build quality of AKG mics, generally speaking, are very good. It comes in this really nice, robust flight case, which is always nice when you're buying multiple mics together. One of the very few things at this price point you'll notice is the mounting brackets required for the toms and the snare. These are static mounting brackets. So unlike the ones you may find on the higher end, Audix mics that we have, for example, has a gooseneck stand as well. So you can articulate it to aim at different parts of the skin of the head as you need, depending on the sound, depending on the kit you have. That's a good amount of flexibility that you should have when you're recording drums. So the only thing about these mounting brackets is that first, they are a really tight fit, so don't be afraid of maybe breaking them, but they are pretty robust. What this essentially means is that when you're recording the toms, the floor tom, or the snare, you can't play with the Z-axis to get different tonal options. You're stuck to that one height angle that it sort of comes in the case. So just keep that in mind, because sometimes, depending on where you hit the head of the drum, whether it be the snare or the toms, they produce very different sounds if you angle it directly to the center of the head or towards the periphery of it. That's something that you won't get too much room with these mics. Aside from that, the quality is actually surprisingly decent for a entry-level, drum package, somewhere around the 35,000 mark. When you think about some of the other competitors that come from, either Audix or Shure or Samson even, they're pretty much the same sort of quality for the most part. What I do have to say about these mics compared to, for example, the Samson kits that I used to have, which are around the same price point, is that The P4s, which are used for the snare, the toms, and the floor tom, sound much better than the Q tom and the Q snares that came with the Samson. They are a little snappier, they've got slightly better definition as well, and it sounds a lot more full-bodied as a raw track compared to some of those Samson ones that we used to use. So without further ado, I want you guys to listen to what these mics sound like. The way we're going to go about doing it is that we have Prittul Chauhan on drums. Prittul is an incredible drummer. He's a solid rock drummer with a great sense of groove and feel. You've seen him on the channel. If you've seen any of the live sessions, you are guaranteed to find him in some of them. The way we're going to be treating this is going through each of the mics first in isolation, completely raw. So the kick mic separately, the snare, the toms, and the overheads first separately. After which we'll give you an example of the full kit, playing a groove, completely raw. There's no post-processing on this at all. There's no amount of mixing. The only thing that's been done is a little bit of panning and balancing of levels, but that's about it. If you want like the raw stems and the multi-tracks of these particular mics, then leave us a comment. If enough people want it, then we'll put out a link where you can download the stems directly. So after you hear the drums completely raw, then we'll give you an example of what it sounds like in the mix. I gotta say, my initial impressions, the toms and the snare actually sound pretty decent. The only place where I feel it could have been better is the floor tom. And that's also, I think, partly to do with the mounting, design for this. The fact that there's no vertical articulation means you're stuck in that really weird dead spot of the tom where you can't really get the attack of the tom, you only get the resonance of it. But surprisingly, the snare and the rack tom, they actually sound pretty good, even completely raw. The kick is maybe the other area where I feel it could have been sort of, EQ'd a little better. There's a lot of clickiness in the kick without too much thump and body, which for some people can be a great thing. For example, if you're a metal drummer, then that's kind of the EQ sound you want, sort of built into the mic. But I typically like a kick mic that's a little more natural, a little more all-rounded, with a good amount of low end so that you can choose to do what you want in the mix stage. The overheads are decent. They're slightly on the brighter side. The cymbals that we're using are actually the K Dark series. So the fact that it was sounding a little bright with those cymbals on means that if you had anything like a custom, for example, which are really bright sounding cymbals, it might be a little harsh on the top end. We didn't have those, at the studio when shooting this, so the only reference we have are the K Darks. And even with the K Darks, it did have a little bit of brightness. So these are slightly on the brighter side. And as always, if you guys like the content we're making, please consider subscribing. It really helps the channel. We get to do more reviews like this. We work with more partners and get you the kind of content that you guys want. If there's anything that we missed out in this video that you would like to see, maybe in the next, drum mic kit review, or just generally the reviews that we do, please leave a comment below. We go through all the comments pretty much, so your feedback is greatly appreciated. Just to give you some sense of the signal chain, we're using the Universal Apollo X8P for this particular recording. And we have the SSL 4000 series unison mic that are going through all the mics except the overheads and the kick mic. There's a little bit of EQ done on the SSL itself with a little bit of compression, but that's about it. The overheads are going through a Neve 1084 unison pre from Universal Audio. The kick mic is going through a Helios unison mic pre, and just adding a little bit of bottom end and a little bit of click on top. Hope you guys like this. Remember, do like the video, do share it if it was informative. And if there's anything else more you want to see from our reviews coming in the future, please let us know in the comments. Here you go.